In 2021, one of the most famous tattoo shops in America shut its doors. Not because of bankruptcy, not a scandal, not a lawsuit, not a surprise health inspection. It closed because the owner posted a single photo on Instagram, 14 years in business, its own television show, thousands of clients who'd waited months just to get a seat in the chair, gone after one post. If you've ever pictured owning a tattoo studio as something simple, rent a space, buy a few machines, hire some talented people, collect your cut whenever someone walks in the door, this story is going to complicate that picture. Because the thing actually bringing people through your door may not belong to you at all. You don't own the thing that makes people walk through that door. You're renting it from your own employees. So what does it actually cost to get in before any of that becomes a problem? On paper, tattooing looks like one of the cheapest businesses you could possibly start. No factory, no inventory that spoils, no fleet of trucks sitting in a lot depreciating, just a chair, a needle, and a steady hand. That's a big part of why so many artists eventually try to open a place of their own. The licensing side is almost laughably affordable compared to most storefront businesses. A shop or establishment permit, individual licenses for every artist under your roof, a bloodborne pathogen certification, a health inspection, all of it usually lands somewhere between $500 and $5,000, depending on your state and city. That's it. That's the government's entire price of entry into a business built on permanently altering human skin. The real cost isn't the paperwork, though. It's the room the paperwork happens in. Open a bare-bones street shop, 1 or 2 chairs, a modest storefront, second-hand furniture, a basic autoclave setup, and you can be tattooing paying customers for as little as $15,000 to $50,000. Plenty of profitable, long-running studios have been built on exactly that budget, no more. Now go the other direction entirely. Picture a flagship studio inside a Las Vegas casino complex. Multiple stations, a retail wall stocked with merchandise, the kind of build-out that reads less like a parlor and more like a destination. That version can run $150,000 to $300,000 or more, and that's before a single tattoo gets sold. Same license, same basic equipment list, same industry, technically. A 20-fold difference in what it costs to walk in as the owner. Most shops, whichever tier they open at, reach break-even somewhere between 6 and 18 months, assuming the chairs stay full and the rent doesn't eat them alive first. Notice, too, what's missing from that startup list. No expensive machinery that needs replacing every few years, no cold storage costs, no perishable stock going to waste on a shelf. A tattoo machine that costs a few $100s can run for years with basic maintenance. Compared to opening a restaurant, or a gym, or almost any other storefront business you could name, the physical overhead here is remarkably light, which is exactly why so many owners walk in, assuming the hard part is behind them once the lease is signed and the autoclave's plugged in. Here's the part worth sitting with, though. That $300,000 build-out isn't really buying you a nicer room. A nicer room, on its own, doesn't make a stranger hand over 4 figures for 3 hours of work. What that premium is quietly paying for, whether the owner realizes it or not, is proximity to reputation. The lease is expensive because the address is famous, and fame turns out to be a much stranger thing to own than a lease ever is. Once the doors are actually open, where does the money come from? Not one place. 5 layers, stacked on top of each other, and each one carries a little more risk than the layer underneath it. Layer 1 is the tattoo itself, the obvious one, the one every shop lives or dies on, and it comes in 2 very different flavors. Some shops run on commission. The artist keeps 40 to 60% of what they bring in. The shop takes the rest. Other shops run on booth rental. The artist pays a flat fee, somewhere between $200 and $500 a week, for the right to use the chair, and then keeps everything they earn on top of that. These look like 2 pricing models sitting side by side on a spreadsheet. They're actually 2 completely different bets. Commission ties your income directly to how good your artists are and how full their books stay. You win when they win, you lose when they're slow. Booth rental hands you a fixed number every week, no matter what happens in that chair, which feels safer, right up until you realize you've also handed away any claim to the value that artist is quietly building under your roof, appointment by appointment. Whichever model an owner picks, they're really deciding, without necessarily meaning to, how much of that artist's growing reputation they get to keep for themselves. Hang on to that. It's about to become the whole story. Layer 2 is retail, the easy one, and the smallest one, shop merchandise. Aftercare products sold at the counter instead of sending the client off to a pharmacy. Somebody who just sat still for 3 hours, getting stabbed with a needle 2,000 times a minute, isn't exactly in a haggling mood. They'll usually just grab the $20 tin of healing balm on their way out. None of this changes the business, though. It just captures a little more spend from people who were already walking in for something else. Layer 3 is guest artists, and this is where things start to get interesting. Touring artists, the kind who fly city to city, book out a chair for a weekend, then move on to the next town, don't show up to an empty schedule. They bring their own following with them, their own wait list. People who book a flight and a hotel room specifically to sit in one chair for one weekend with one artist. Notice what just happened there. The shop's 4 walls, its lease, its autoclave, its front desk, none of that filled the appointment book that weekend. The artist's name did. The shop simply supplied the room where the transaction happened to take place. Keep that thought close, because it's about to stop being a footnote. Layer 4 is adjacent services. Laser tattoo removal for the regretted piece from someone's 20s, cosmetic tattooing for clients who'd never otherwise set foot in a traditional shop. Smart owners bolt these on to an existing footprint, since the lease, the front desk, and a chunk of the client base are already paid for. It's genuinely one of the better margin plays available in this business. And notably, the layer with the least to do with any single artist's personal fame. And then there's layer 5, the invisible one, reputation-based pricing. This is where the numbers stop making sense, unless you understand what's actually being sold. Walk into a no-name street shop, and you'll probably see a flat shop minimum. Something like $130 for a small piece. Take it or leave it. Now walk into a studio built around an artist who's fully booked, whose work gets reposted by strangers, whose waitlist runs for months, for the exact same 3 hours, the exact same size of tattoo, the exact same needle, and the exact same ink. That artist can charge 4 figures, same chair, same square footage, same 3 hours on the clock, a gap measured in multiples, not percentages. So what is someone actually paying for in that second scenario? Not the room, not the sterilization equipment, not even, strictly speaking, the tattoo. They're paying for a name. And a name is a genuinely strange thing for a business to build its entire pricing structure on. Because a name doesn't sign a lease. A name doesn't have a non-compete that actually holds up in most states. A name can leave. Lay those 5 layers side by side, and a pattern shows up that most new owners don't notice until it's too late. Layer 1 was already whispering it. Layer 3 basically said it out loud. More and more of the real money is attached to something with your artist's face on it, not your shop's. Retail income is yours, cleanly. The lease is yours. But the premium, the actual margin that separates a mediocre shop from a thriving one, increasingly comes from people who showed up for a specific human being, not a specific street address. And that human being can drive to work tomorrow and, just as easily, choose not to. When they leave, they don't leave their reputation behind on the chair like a forgotten jacket. They take it with them. Every guest artist weekend, every fully booked star tattooer, every 4-figure day rate, all of it is really just an owner renting someone else's audience, one appointment at a time, hoping they keep choosing to rent it out. That's the setup. Here's where it actually breaks. 15 years ago, if you wanted a tattoo career, You needed a shop, a real one, on a real street, with a real sign, because that's genuinely how people found you. Foot traffic was the algorithm back then. Own the location, and you own the flow of new clients. That world is gone now. An artist today can build a 6-month waitlist off a phone camera and a decent ring light, with a shop's name nowhere in the picture. The follower count lives on their personal account. The portfolio lives on their personal grid. The messages asking when the next opening is land in their personal inbox, not the shop's. Which means the thing an owner spent years and real marketing dollars building, the exact reputation everyone in Layer 5 was paying a premium for, was never actually sitting inside those 4 walls. It was sitting inside one person, and that person can stand up and walk out anytime they want. Here's how the collapse actually happens, step by step, because it's almost never one dramatic moment. It's a slow chain reaction that only looks sudden from the outside. It starts innocently enough. A shop takes on a promising artist, gives them a chair, maybe covers some marketing, lets them build a name under the studio's roof. The artist gets better, busier, gets tagged in more posts, gets recognized at conventions, gets that first unsolicited comment calling them the best in the city. Somewhere in that process, the balance of power flips, quietly, without anyone announcing it. The shop stops being the reason clients show up and starts being just the room where the appointment happens to take place. Once that flip happens, the artist knows it too, even if nobody says it out loud. And leverage, once someone actually has it, tends to get used. Maybe they ask for a bigger cut, past 60%, past 70%. Maybe the shop can't or won't pay it. So the artist opens their own place 3 blocks away, or simply moves to whichever shop offers the better split. Either way, they don't leave the clientele behind like an old jacket on a hook. The waitlist follows the Instagram handle, not the address. The appointment book empties out over a matter of weeks. And the original shop? The lease is still due on the 1st of the month. The insurance premium doesn't care that the chair's empty. If there are other artists on payroll, their checks still need to clear. Overhead that felt completely manageable, back when that one chair was pulling 4-figure days, suddenly looks like a fixed cost with nothing standing behind it. Owners sometimes try to head this off with a non-compete clause, something that says a departing artist can't tattoo within a certain radius for a certain number of months. In practice, these are notoriously hard to enforce against an individual tradesperson. And even where they hold up on paper, they don't do anything about the follower count. A judge can stop someone from opening a shop 2 miles away. No judge can stop 200,000 people from following their favorite artist's new address on Instagram the same week it opens. This is exactly what happened at the shop we opened this video with. High Voltage Tattoo wasn't just a business with an address in West Hollywood. It was Kat Von D's business, built into a household name through years of television, through a fan base that followed her specifically, not the storefront she happened to work out of. When she decided to leave Los Angeles for Indiana in 2021, there was no version of that shop that made sense without her standing in it. So on December 1st of that year, after 14 years, it simply closed. Not bankrupt, not shut down by any regulator, just over, the moment its center of gravity moved somewhere else. There's a second layer of exposure sitting underneath all of this, too, one that has nothing to do with any single artist leaving. Tattooing is a bloodborne pathogen risk by definition. Needles, broken skin, close contact, and a shop's entire reputation can also collapse from one negligence lawsuit tied to an infection, or from a contract that never spelled out, in writing, who actually keeps the client list if an artist walks. Handshake agreements between artists and owners have ended long friendships, and more than once, entire businesses, simply because nobody wrote down who owned what before the money started rolling in. Which raises the real question this business quietly forces on every owner. Whether they realize it going in or not, if the value can leave whenever it wants, what exactly are you the owner of? Not every shop ends up like High Voltage, though. There's a version of this business that survives that exact scenario, and it comes from, of all people, a motocross champion who'd never tattooed a single client in his life. In 2004, Hart opened a tattoo shop inside the Palms Casino Resort in Las Vegas and called it Hart and Huntington. At first glance, it looked like it was making the same bet High Voltage would later make, a shop built around one famous name, in an industry where fame is supposedly the one thing you can't actually own. It even got its own reality show, Inked, which ran 3 seasons on Ava E. Read that again, a tattoo shop with its own television series, the exact recipe that would eventually close High Voltage's doors. The shop nearly came apart early on, too, just not for the reason you'd expect. Hart's original business partner, John Huntington, sold his 48% ownership stake back to Hart not long after the Vegas location opened. 2 years later, in 2006, Huntington filed a lawsuit claiming he was still owed serious money tied to the use of his own name. Hart and Huntington was, after all, literally built on both of their names. It took a high-profile Las Vegas attorney and a formal mediation to settle it. That's exactly the kind of dispute that ends a lot of small businesses outright. 2 names on the sign, one of them walking away, a lawsuit over what the brand itself was even worth. It's the trademark version of the same trap we just spent several minutes inside, except this time, the person who left wasn't a tattoo artist with a personal following. He was a business partner with a legal claim to the name itself. So how did Hart and Huntington not just survive that, but come out the other side with 5 locations, its own clothing line, and 2 decades of continuous operation? Because somewhere along the way, ownership of any one artist's fame stopped being the point. The shop kept its resident artists rotating and its guest program constantly bringing in new touring talent, so no single chair ever became load-bearing for the whole business. It leaned hard into location, the Forum Shops at Caesar's Palace, a spot built for foot traffic from people who were never looking for one specific artist, just an experience while they were already out shopping. It built a retail and apparel business, generating revenue independent of who happened to be holding the needle that day. And it kept the television exposure attached to the company name, Hart and Huntington, rather than to any single tattooer's personal account. In other words, Hart figured out, by design or by accident, hard to say, the exact lesson High Voltage never got the chance to learn. If the thing people are paying for is one specific person, the business is only ever as durable as that person's willingness to stick around. But if you can get people paying for an experience, a location, a brand, something bigger than any one chair, the business can survive an artist leaving, a partner leaving, even a lawsuit over the name on its own door. It's not a perfect shield, to be clear. Hart and Huntington still depends, at some level, on Carrie Hart remaining the face behind the brand, and on the shop staying interesting enough that new talent keeps wanting a chair there. No structure makes a personality-driven business entirely personality-proof, but it demonstrates something High Voltage's story never got to show. The gap between a 14-year business that vanishes over a single Instagram post and a 20-year business that survives a lawsuit over its own name isn't luck. It's whether the owner built something bigger than whoever happened to be sitting in the chair that year. So which one are you actually buying into, if you're the one signing the lease? The worst case isn't hard to picture anymore. You just watched it happen. A shop built entirely around one gifted person, thriving right up until the moment that person decides to stop showing up. 14 years of history, gone the way High Voltage went. Not a collapse anyone saw coming, but a single post, on an ordinary Monday, that ends everything overnight. No bankruptcy filing, no dramatic final week. Just a chair that used to be booked out for months, sitting empty, while the lease keeps coming due regardless. The best case looks different, and honestly, less glamorous, which is probably exactly why fewer owners choose it on purpose. It's a shop that never lets any single artist become the whole business. Rotating guest talent. A location people show up to for its own sake. A name on the door that means something independent of who's currently holding the machine. It's slower to build. It photographs worse for a TV pitch. But it's the version that can survive a star artist walking out, a partner suing over the trademark, even a pandemic, because the thing being sold was never just one person's hands. Here's what almost nobody tells you before the lease gets signed. The equipment, the sterilization certificates, the build-out, the licensing, none of that is actually what you're buying. Every bit of it can be replaced with a phone call and a check. The one thing you can't buy, can't lease, and can't put your own name on, no matter how much the sign out front cost, is somebody else's reputation. That's true of a lot more than tattoo studios if you think about it. Any business that runs on a personality, a hair salon built around one stylist, a restaurant built around one chef, a fitness studio built around one instructor everybody signed up for, is quietly making the same bet High Voltage made. It just usually takes longer to notice, because most of those industries don't have a fan base organized enough or loyal enough to make the exit this fast, this or this total. So the next time someone tells you they own a tattoo shop, ask them the question High Voltage answered better than any business plan ever could. Do they own the business, or are they just the last person in the room to find out they were only ever renting it?